Welcome, everybody. Thursday, what is this? Tuesday, February 21st. How's everybody doing? I just realized I didn't update my screen here. 1 second. I thought I did. There we go. There we go. Anyway, this is the Aravosis Report. I am John Aravosis. Welcome all. I'm going to get TikTok rolling here. We're going to see if I can get my sound working on TikTok. Because if not, I'll have to go back to my old handy dandy little microphone because my big fun microphone no longer communicates to TikTok because, TikTok. All right, well, let me know. TikTokers. Anyway, you guys, introduce yourselves a little bit. As you know, we take a minute just to let folks get here. Okay, TikTokers, is my sound working or no? Sorry, we're going to take a little break here. Can you guys hear me or not, TikTokers? No sound. All right. All right, well, that's unfortunate. All right, I'm going to try my good microphone. My less good microphone here. Now, can you hear me with this one? The rest of you I know are fine because you got my good mic. Okay, then I'll use this microphone. For some reason, sadly, TikTok no longer hears my really good microphone, which is annoying. So, because I like my good microphone, but it no longer talks to TikTok on my iPad anymore. Anyway, welcome back, everybody. John Aravosis here. As usual, we'll take a minute or two just to get a critical mass of folks here. So introduce yourselves if you would. Thank you. You look marvelous as well, Robin. Introduce yourselves, guys, if you would. Just say where you're from. And we'll wait a minute for the numbers of folks to arrive, and then we will get rolling. All right. Bonsoir, Audrey. Comment ça va, les morts? Anyway, guys, what's going on? We got a lot of news today, so I'm hoping I don't go too long, but we'll see. But there's a lot of interesting stuff. Biden and Putin both spoke today, so we're going to be talking about that. And I don't know what else. We'll try to do a Discord afterwards if we don't go too over. It just depends how much time we need to actually get through the show. Luis de Puerto Rico. Excellent. I have been to Puerto Rico, but a long time ago, but I liked it. People were very nice. All right, guys, I will start my introductions. I am John Aravosis. This is the Aravosis Report, my daily show, nightly, in fact, every day at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. As the way the show always works is I talk for maybe half an hour about the news, and then I take your guys' questions. On my iPad, I've got TikTok. For you guys, it's quite simple. Go to my profile, and in my profile, look for the Q&A link, click the Q&A, and you can put my questions there. For the rest of you, obviously use the comment box at the bottom. I very much appreciate the gifts on TikTok and the super chat and super stickers on YouTube because I do this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out, and you guys are the ones paying my bills and making it possible for me to do this. So thank you. I appreciate your support continuing. All right. So today, kind of the big news of the day, although it's funny, there's a lot of news. I'm not convinced anything's earth shattering. President Biden and President Putin of Russia. Thank you, Jamie and Andrew, for the gifts there. And Tattooed has we have a whale already. Do the wave for the whale. Thank you for that. Biden and thank you, Grouchy. Biden and Putin both did a speech today. Putin's was pretty much like a State of the Union address for Russia. Biden's was a 20-minute speech in Poland at nighttime. Putin's was at noon. Biden's was at night outside, sort of with a nice crowd, music, flags, kids and parents, this kind of stuff. Putin's was indoors in this huge hall. And Putin, this is the really weird thing. And Sky News, Michael Clark, who's their defense analyst at Sky News, was noticing the difference. Putin, okay, so Biden is freezing cold, Warsaw, very cold in winter, wearing an overcoat. They're playing music when he comes out. He's talking to this large crowd. He only speaks 20 minutes, which keeps it doable. Thank you, big drama, right? Longer than 20 minutes, people get bored. And he's very impassioned, very, sort of angry. And my dog won. There you go. Very angry and impassioned about freedom and victory and this kind of stuff. Putin gets in front of a large crowd, speaks for 2 hours. I'm sorry. Anybody speaking for 2 hours, you're like, that's it, right? And end me there. And the weirdest part, I don't have it handy here. You've got to pull it up and just Google. Putin is standing on this stage, but it looks like the stage, for the New York Rockettes or something. It's a stage that could fit 100 people standing side by side. And you've got little Putin, who I'm pretty sure, what is he, 5'6", I think, right? Hey, Google, how tall is Vladimir Putin? Yes, you do. Hey, Google, how tall is Vladimir Putin? You know, I hope the Supreme Court just comes down on you like a ton of bricks. Hold on. Google. Google knows these things. How tall is Vladimir Putin? 5'6". Yeah, 5'7". 5'7". What is 5'7" in centimeters? 170 centimeters for those of you from around the world. Okay. The guy is not tall. So imagine putting Putin on a stage that is a huge stage. I'm talking enormous stage. This little 5'7" man, I mean, literally this big, and he's behind a big podium. So you've got most of his body hidden and he looks small. I mean, this is not what you do. I mean, he's an idiot. He's an idiot, first of all, because he's always using those big tables. Now, mind you, he's afraid of getting killed, so he's always making people be 40 feet away from him at the table. But on stage, you don't want to look empty on stage because he's a short man. Now, again, this is where, the dictator in him comes out, and he must think it makes him look like I control the room. But in any case, Biden talked a lot about freedom. I'll give you some of the Biden quotes in a minute. Putin didn't make any news until the very end. He didn't announce a draft. He didn't announce that he was declaring war, because remember, they're not officially at war. It was very boring. He blamed the West, of course. He talked a lot about how, the West and NATO want to destroy Russia. They want to kill us all, and they started the war. And, everything was, right. Putin's speech was directed mostly at the Russian public. Biden's speech was directed at Europe, America too, but at Europe. The one bit of news Putin announced, but in the end, looking back at it, not that important. Putin initially sounded like he was pulling out of the only remaining nuclear arms control treaty we have with Russia. Thank you, Al. Then the Russians backtracked and said, well, no, we're not pulling out of the treaty. We'll still abide by the limits, right? Because the treaty says how many nuclear weapons you can have, this kind of thing. Thank you, Zoe. How many weapons you can have. So it was sort of like, okay, you're pulling out, but you're not pulling out. Bottom line, the Russians have stopped allowing inspections, because typically you would have inspections of facilities to make sure that we're abiding by the agreement's requirements for how many nuclear weapons we can have. 2 years ago during COVID, the Russians stopped letting us go and inspect. They're still not letting us go and inspect. So what Putin announced today did absolutely nothing to change where Russia is with regards to this arms control treaty. But remember, I've told you guys, I think there's, at least two main issues with Putin and sort of Russian foreign policy overall. One, they lie a lot. And I say that, I'm not saying that in a joking way or a mean way. I have seen, frankly, I found this out with Elon Musk as well. I never paid much attention to Musk, and I've been paying too much attention to him since he took over Twitter. The guy lies a lot. It's kind of weird. And there are people like this who just lie a lot, and I think they're so important they get away with it. The Russians do this too, typically with their foreign policy. And what this means is when they allege something, you shouldn't believe it. Not only should you not believe it to be true, but you should generally kind of suspect if they're saying something, it's probably not true. So that's the first thing with the Russians. In other words, when they said, oh, we're pulling out of this arms control treaty, you kind of sit there and go, okay, I want the details because I'm suspecting you're lying. Now, why would the Russians be lying? Reason number two, the Russians exist to scare you all. They aren't winning this war. They no longer, and we don't even know if they did, they no longer have a world-class military, right? We thought they did. We thought they did, but they no longer have a world-class military. And now, YouTube folks, you can still hear, right? I see WC Fields or somebody complained, but everybody else you can hear, just making sure. We thought they were world-class military. We thought they were the number 2 military. They're not, right? Culturally, they wrote some good books 100 years ago, but and during the Soviet years, they had good culture. A lot of it was based on drugs, but and steroids, but whatever. Now, what do they got, right? The culture isn't there. The economy is terrible. The economy is small and terrible. We know that their military is no big shakes. They've got nukes, but so does North Korea. Right? Doesn't make North Korea a great country. Just makes it a country, unfortunately, that we have to worry with, which is sad. But it's oops. Hello, dog. Sorry, the dog keeps coming and going underneath me. So that was sort of the big thing of Putin's speech. Big thing of Putin's speech was talking about the silly arms control thing that ended up not being true anyway. Meaning, They weren't pulling out. Oh, I know. The main point I was going to make here is pretty much when the Russians do anything that is for Western consumption, and I mean, this was for the Russian audience, but it was also for you, they're going to lie to you and they're going to try to scare you. But the scare that they're doing to you is a lie. And that's the thing I keep reminding you of. All the stuff with nukes that we've always talked about with nuclear weapons, every time they threaten nuclear weapons, it's a lie. It's a lie because they can't afford to use their nuclear weapons because we have nuclear weapons. They're never, ever, ever going to use them because we will use ours in return and everybody dies. And I mean, the fear you have about nuclear weapons is the same fear they have. I refuse to believe any of this BS about, well, Russians, have planning for you. Thank you, Alan, to use nuclear weapons in war. Yeah, sure they do. But part of their planning is what will America and NATO do in response? Because remember, it's not just the US. Britain and France also have nuclear weapons. What will we do in response if they nuke us? They know that. They're as scared of us nuking them as we are of them nuking us, which is why it's not going to happen. Any case, so the speech, I don't think a lot happened today, frankly. Let me make one final point on Biden's speech. Thank you, Fitzy. I was bored by Biden's speech, I have to say. Everyone thought it, I will say this, though. The pundits thought Biden's speech was great. The military folks thought it was great. All of that's great. I mean, really, that's great. I was bored to death. Biden is a bad speaker. It's not his fault. I mean, he is old. And I mean, he's old. What do you do, right? He's old and he's a bad speaker. There's nothing we can do about it. So I don't mean, I'm not trying to judge him based on that. But my concern is, thank you, Malachite. My concern is, this was not the speech I wanted. I want a speech like Ronald Reagan is giving the speech, right? I want something that's rah, rah, let's go. Here is America, what America stands for, why we're here helping you. I mean, Biden talked about freedom. Let me read you a little bit of this. I mean, he talked about freedom and stuff, which was fine. Let me see here. Let me read you some quotes here. This is sort of via Sky News. Biden is rounding up his address in Warsaw, insisting that there is no nobler goal than freedom. He adds, all that we do now must be done so our children and grandchildren know it as well. In a memorable moment, Mr. Biden said, freedom, the enemy of the tyrant. Mind you, he's calling Putin a tyrant by doing that, which is interesting. Freedom, the enemy of the tyrant and the hope of the ages. Freedom, stand with us. We will stand with you. Let us, for me, this is way too schmaltzy, but that's fine. We will stand with you. Oops, where is this? I looked up. Freedom, we will stand with you. Let us move forward with faith and conviction and a binding commitment. A binding commitment to be allies. Joe Biden appears to deliver a message to Putin telling the crowd the appetites of the autocrat cannot be appeased. They can only be opposed. Autocrats only understand one word. No, no, no. Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. I mean, all of that's fine. To me, it's kind of, it's kind of la, la, la. I'm not sure I get it. Okay, folks, what are you complaining about with the mic? Sorry, but I see a lot of you. What do you want? I moved it on the side. If the mic's not working, I'm going to take it off. What's the issue? Oh, it's causing the muffle? Then you know what? Then let's just take it off. Here. There. We'll just use the mic on the, let's just use the mic on the iPad. It's easier. All of that's fine. I just, and again, since, Sky News is saying it like, oh my God, this is great, right? If everyone thinks the speech was great, then good. I just, maybe for my take, because I also get bored at the State of the Union, which is the American 1 hour speech the president gives every year. And, he gave a week ago. I get bored to death with that stuff. Thank you, Tom. I need somebody very smart and very moving to speak up and tell me why we're here in this war. Thank you, Purnell. As I've said before, I'm not going to go through all the explanation again. I think we should be helping Ukraine. I think it is morally important to help Ukraine. I think we should stand up to genocide. I think we should particularly stand up to genocide in Europe because in many ways we are a European country. We also have seen what happens when you have genocide in Europe. Genocide in other parts of the world do not necessarily turn into world wars. Genocide in Europe does. There is a strategic reason as well of why we should get involved. I think we need this more. We need a better explanation, but nonetheless, people thought it was good, so that's fine with me. Really quick, we do have a Discord set up. I got more news to tell you in a second here. We do have a Discord set up. Remember, among the ways I have to sort of finance my work, but also finance the work we do in Ukraine. For the beginning, I've wanted to raise money to help people in Ukraine, and we've done it through a lot of different fundraisers we've done. We've raised over $80,000 US to provide humanitarian aid and also a little bit of military. We've bought drones and a few other things for the Ukrainians. And we've also been doing auctions in my Discord. I've got a Discord community, discord.aravosis.com, anybody who knows Discord. And there we've been doing a lot of cool auctions. We just auctioned off a Ukrainian flag that a woman in Ukraine made that was kind of neat. Couple other things we've got going on right now. I've got a couple military patches. This one's kind of neat. This is the sniper don't see me at night version of this patch, but it's kind of neat because yesterday you saw Biden meeting a bunch of officials in Zelensky's office, all wearing this patch, which is neat. They're all Velcro. So we're auctioning these guys off. Auctioning off the plane parts. Always my favorite. This is the final box we've got of Russian plane parts. This is a Russian fighter jet that was shot down over Ukraine. Very exciting. Thank you, Stulu, for the thing. Very cool. Actually, this is my favorite because this piece is like 4.5 inches. It's like over 10 centimeters. Very neat titanium. Very cool. We've got the whole story on the jet being shot down. It's actually very interesting. It's a Russian fighter who initially they accused of war crimes, and then, according to the Ukrainians, he switched sides and is now part of a Russian fighting group fighting for Ukraine. Really interesting. We've got the whole story on the pilot. Anyway, that's for auction over at the Discord. And the final thing we just got a couple days ago are the Zelensky sweatshirt. This is literally the sweatshirt that President Zelensky wears. I'll step back. It's good. I washed it actually, so now it fits me a little better. But it's the sweatshirt that Zelensky wears, the one that he wore at the White House and everywhere else. They're really cool. They're very soft. They're very soft. The only thing is clearly if you put a microphone on it, it doesn't work, I found out. But we're auctioning these off too. Right now, these are in our private auction, which basically means the paying members of the Discord, people who are supporting the Discord via Patreon. But we do have public auctions as well. Everything else is in the public, meaning, in other words, you don't have to pay to be a member of our Discord. It's all free. But if you pay to support my work, because I do this for free and I do need help paying the bills, you get some of the cooler auctions. So there you go. Oh, it's totally, absolutely for real. It's so for real, you can touch it. All right, let's jump ahead. So we've got the Biden and the tyrants. Okay, next story. Oh, so this was interesting. So Biden mentioned atrocities. And I thought it would be interesting, and I saw this on, I think I saw this on Sky News, a nice description of war crimes versus crimes against humanity. Vice President Harris, U.S. Vice President this weekend, was talking about how Russia had committed crimes against humanity. They did a nice, actually, this might have even been in the Washington Post. I'm not remembering which one this was in. Oh, this is the Washington Post. Yeah, it was the Washington Post today. And they did a nice explainer, let me just read to you, of the difference of a war crime versus crimes against humanity, okay? Crimes against humanity were first prosecuted during the Nuremberg trials of former Nazi officials after World War II. The 1998 Rome Statute, which established the International Criminal Court, defines crimes against humanity as any range of acts, including murder, enslavement, deportation, torture, and rape, but that are committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. So you get that part? So a war crime would be a rape, okay? Or a murder of a civilian would be a war crime. It's a crime against humanity when it's systematic, meaning it's part of the plan. Part of the plan is to rape the population, to murder the population, to kill civilians. It's not just a soldier who did the wrong thing. A soldier who did the wrong thing is a war crime. A soldier who's following orders to systematically kill Ukrainian citizens, that's a crime against humanity. So that's the difference. Now, the article was pointing out this is part of what makes crimes against humanity harder to prove than war crimes, because with a war crime, you would first have to prove that the crime occurred, right? That this was a soldier, this was a civilian, he killed the civilian, right? And it wasn't, whatever, self-defense, whatever you'd want to call it. But to prove it as a crime against humanity, you'd have to prove that this was part of a systematic effort by Russians in Ukraine to kill civilians. Okay? So that's the difference there. Next up. Deep. Oh, this was kind of funny. So I mentioned last night that Prigozhin, who is a Russian oligarch. The oligarchs are the billionaires, but they're the corrupt billionaires. They become rich, basically. They became rich by the when the Soviet Union, a lot of these guys, when the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, remember it was a communist system. The government owned all the businesses. Well, they sold the businesses. Thank you, Paula. They sold the businesses to the public, haha. And of course, it was all the rich billionaires, all the rich people for start, who had the business connections and the political connections, excuse me, I should say much more importantly, who got all these businesses and they got them paying next to nothing. Now, why? Because then the politicians wanted kickbacks. So it's this whole corrupt system between Putin and the billionaires and all of this, right? So Prigozhin is one of the billionaires. He's the guy who created the Internet Research Agency, which is that Russian group that interfered in the 2016 election, right? Stealing Hillary's campaign information, all that kind of stuff. Well, he also is in charge of the Wagner mercenary group, which is this group of hired guns, killers for hire, basically, right? It's a private army that's fighting in Russia, a Russian private army fighting in Ukraine alongside the Russians. Well, Prigozhin yesterday, and there's a long history here of conflict between the mercenary army and the regular Russian army, because the mercenary army exists because the Russian army sucks. Right? I mean, that's the concept behind it, right? Why would you need to bring in mercenaries to fight your war in Ukraine if the Russian army was so good, right? And the Russian army knows this. And Prigozhin, by the way, has no problem saying this. So he's always pissing off the Russian army and the Russian Minister of Defense. So get this. So yesterday, Prigozhin puts out an angry press release. I think it was a video, saying, he's very angry, really pissed off in this video, saying that the Russian military has cut off his troops in eastern Ukraine. They are fighting in Bakhmut, especially. Bakhmut is the town over here in eastern Ukraine. That's the one where the biggest fighting has been going on for about a month now. Okay, right on the front between the Ukrainians and the Russians. I mean, it's Ukraine, of course, but the Russian troops occupy here. And the Prigozhin's people, the mercenaries, have been most of the fighters there. He said yesterday that the Ministry of Defense cut off their ammunition because they're pissed at him. Because he's been speaking up. He's been a loudmouth. He's been implicitly criticizing Putin. He has certainly been showing up Putin. Like Prigozhin keeps showing up to these events, like New Year's. I think it was New Year's. Prigozhin showed up and met with the troops. Putin does not meet with the troops. Putin's afraid of getting killed. Prigozhin showed up and was like, Mr. Buddy Buddy. And there's the concern, I think, in Moscow, is that this guy wants Putin's job. So what did they do? The Defense Department in Russia turns around and just stops giving ammunition to Prigozhin's fighters while they're fighting the Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine in Bakhmut. I mean, he says it's treasonous. He's not wrong. You don't cut off their weapons when they're in the middle of fighting the Ukrainians. Well, the Russian Ministry of Defense came out today and said, this is not true. This is totally untrue. Prigozhin lost it, got pissed again. Listen to this. Francis Scar of the BBC found more video and said, after the Ministry of Defense denied yesterday's claim that they cut off his ammunition, he's now accusing them of lying. So Prigozhin's accusing the Ministry of Defense of lying and says that the Wagner group in Ukraine now, in eastern Ukraine, is only getting 20% of the ammunition that it needs. Why do I find it funny? Because it's hilarious. The fact that the Russians are at each other's throats. That was a troll, obviously, but that's okay. I mean, it's not, trust me, if you're Russian, this isn't funny. If you're not Russian and you're on the side of freedom, this is hilarious. Thank you. Happy Beach Family is doing fireworks. It's fireworks worthy because it means the Russians are having their own little military civil war when the Russians should be unified to take on the Ukrainians, right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you're Russian, you need to have a unified force focused on one enemy. They've got multiple enemies, including each other, to the point where they're cutting off their own military's ammunition in the biggest battle they've got right now, which is Bakhmut. This is hilarious. And it's hilarious in a wonderful sense is what I'm saying. This is great for Ukraine. Absolutely great for Ukraine. And they're doing it in the open. Now, the only thing I would say is, maybe this is a plot. Maybe this is a bluff. Maybe they're doing it because they're trying to make us think, oh, everything's falling apart. Things will be easier than we think it is in the East, right? To try to give the Ukrainians some sense of, I don't know, maybe that the Ukrainians will, rest on their laurels, as we say, or, basically not fight as hard or something, which I can't see happening. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe they're lying. But if they're not lying, this is really good. And again, the military folks out there can explain this to you better than I can. Thank you, Bonnie. I just know historically from covering military issues, unit morale and cohesion, these guys, military people see themselves as brothers and sisters, as family. You're looking after each other's lives. The idea that the guy next to you hates your guts and thinks you suck and isn't giving you the weapons to defend yourself because he hates you, if anything, it also suggests that they may kill each other, which is not good for the Ukrainians, is not good for the Russians. So not good. Now, almost done with the news part. We'll shift over to the Q&A shortly. Another thing we've got to support my work, if you guys can, and again, I always love my coffee mug for my sister, Ukraine. I do this full time. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out. Initially, I was doing this 7 days a week. And then about 5 months in, when I lost my voice, I shifted to 5 days a week. So I am doing this full time 5 days a week, one show in the evening, 6 o'clock Eastern, and then throughout the day, collecting the news, doing news on TikTok, etc. No one's paying me. You guys are the ones paying me. So that's why I asked for gifts. And I very much appreciate your support here in my Discord, everywhere else. So thank you for that. Another way to support, I always try to pitch this, is the Patreon. Thank you, Dark Phoenix, for that. Is the Patreon. Patreon is a really neat way. Thank you, Aggie. Patreon's a neat way for you to help creators out there, not just me, but it's basically a website. They don't take too much. It's not great, but they don't take too much. Thank you, Jean-Marquis. And who's it? Alita. It's a way of basically committing, a promise of $5, $10 a month, something like that. And every month it'll just charge you and give the payment to the creator. And, when you want, you can shut it off. It's not a problem. People will typically give me $5, $10. I've got one guy giving me $100. Different levels of what you get. Although, frankly, you're supporting my work. That's the point, obviously. But if you subscribe on Patreon for $5 or more, it also means you're a VIP member at the Discord. That gives you access to the VIP auction and a couple other things, monthly meeting if you pay enough. And anyway, but if you can check it out, I'd appreciate it. I sort of say this basically as anybody who's been watching my show for a long time now and you really like my work, please do know that no one's paying me. I am doing this, and I've sort of have a history of doing this in life where I try to sort of make projects work on their own that I think matters, and then just see if people can support me. So if you can, I'd appreciate the help on Discord, on Patreon, patreon.com/Aravosis. Easy for you to find. You guys on YouTube and everywhere else, it's aravosis.com. You see at the bottom of the screen. For you guys, you could go to aravosis.com or just go to my my profile on TikTok. There's a URL there. Click the link, and it'll give you my Discord, my Patreon, everything else. A little bit more here. Wagner Group. The Italian Prime Minister arrived in Kyiv today, Giorgia Meloni. Initially, we had heard she was going to arrive yesterday. I'm guessing that maybe she got the news of the Biden thing and they put it off a day as a result, which made sense. Because I was saying yesterday, you're just going to, it's just going to, the Biden trip is going to overshadow her trip. So anyway, she's there today, had a good meeting with Zelensky. They went to Bucha and Irpin, which is interesting. Bucha and Irpin were two of the really horrific war crime cities where the Russians committed war crimes. The one thing that annoyed me, and you might have remembered I mentioned this yesterday, okay? Yesterday I told you that Italy, there was a report that Italy was happy to give airplanes to, oh, thank you, Jack. I see Jack K. Ruse just pledged to become a Patreon supporter. Thank you for that. So I saw my phone. I always think I'm getting a message or something. Thank you for that, Jack. That was very nice of you. Thank you there, El. Oh, with Meloni, yes. There's a story yesterday that the Italians are very interested in providing airplanes to Ukraine. Now, they don't want to be the first. And they listed all the different airplanes. They don't want to be the first to do it for political reasons, but they would be happy to jump in with everybody else. And I said yesterday, yeah, sure. Right. And that I sort of was using it as another example of, it's funny. I've seen this in people who cover financial stuff online call it hopium, like hope and opium. Hopium is basically using hope as a drug, basically, like sort of like you're addicted to hope. In other words, it's not really a valid hope. Thank you, Magic Photo. Any case, what happens today? It gets totally undercut today. So today's report is Rome currently has no plans. I think this might be from Sky News. Rome currently has no plans to offer fighter jets to Ukraine, a line that is also being taken by some other European countries. Asked about the possibility of supplying modern jets to Kyiv, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said, at the moment, the supply of planes is not on the table. It followed a report yesterday by La Repubblica that suggested Italy could supply 5 AMX bomber jets. So basically, we went from yesterday, Italy saying, yeah, we're happy to jump in and help provide some fighter jets. And I said, sure they are, right? Sure they are. To today going, not so much, not so much. So don't believe the hopium. Don't take the hopium. Germany's largest, this is good from good German news if Felix is here tonight. We like to have good news for Felix. Germany's largest arms manufacturer, Rheinmetall, said the first batch of ammunition for Gepard anti-aircraft systems would arrive in Ukraine by July. Again, July, but what do you do? Belarus. Okay, so weird stuff going on with Belarus. Belarus announced today that it is planning to form a volunteer military of 100,000 to 150,000 men. Belarus is this country here, Ukraine, right? Kyiv. Most of the fighting in Ukraine over here, Russian occupation over here. This is Belarus. This is Russia. Belarus, horrible dictatorship run by a dictator named Lukashenko. This is Poland, just to give you a sense of where everything is, right? This is Poland over here. So nasty, nasty dictator Lukashenko, been threatening Ukraine a lot, but at the same time, it looks like Putin would love Belarus to invade, to have another front in the war, but the Belarusians themselves are not too thrilled because the dictator's military isn't thrilled about it, and he's a brutal dictator. He needs the military at home to defend him. He can't afford sending his military away and then having an uprising, right, in Belarus. Well, so I'm not sure I believe his claim that he's going to be able to create 100 to 150,000 volunteer force. Hang on a second. Hey, Google, what's the population of Belarus? Okay, 9 million. So it's not a big country. Hey, Google, I think it's 60,000. Hey, Google, what's the size of the Belarusian military? Here's some information from the web that might possibly help. According to Wikipedia, in 2017, ISS estimated 65. Personnel in the armed forces numbered 48,000. Oh, so 48,000. So somebody said 65 here. I've seen Kyle. Yeah, 48,000. So it's in that ballpark. I will say this. I have seen quotes that the Belarusian military is quite possibly the worst military in all of Europe. I'm not sure it's going to, I know I'm getting everyone's Google to give you nice military answers. Thank you, Loyalty. I'm not convinced that, doubling the worst military in Europe is going to give you double the pleasure. It's just going to give you that many more men who don't know what they're doing. So I'm not sure I care. Now, what I thought was interesting, though, second Belarusian story today. Listen to this. The Kyiv Independent was reporting on this. A group of European and U.S. media outlets has obtained a 17-page document allegedly detailing Russia's plans to subjugate Belarus and dismantle its independence. Thank you, Big Gator Girl. The document details Russia's future steps to take full control of Belarusian political, economic, and military spheres by the end of the decade. According to the document, by 2030, Belarus should have a single currency and tax system with Russia, and its media space must be under Russia control. The Belarusian army must comply with Russian regulations, and key military production must be transferred from Belarus to Russia. Now, this could be true. It also could be disinformation. I mean, it's possible it's somebody on our side who created this document to try to cause more problems for Lukashenko at home. right? So that his own, because it's a dictatorship, but he still did have an uprising a few years ago. So he's still worried about his hold on power. So hard to know. And at the same time, wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised if Putin wanted to pull Belarus back in, as part of his, let's bring the band back let's bring the Soviet band back together. All right, that's what I've got for the news tonight. We've also got a store, which I don't pitch enough, store.aravosis.com, where we sell a lot of sweatshirts and T-shirts and stuff, and all Ukrainian themed. Half the proceeds from the store go to support our humanitarian work and military work in Ukraine. Half of it goes to support my work because I do this for free, so it helps pay the bills. So go check out store.aravosis.com. Same thing, you can find it on the aravosis.com link or the link in your profile. All right, let's do questions. For you guys on TikTok, go to my profile and hit the Q&A link. You bought another T-shirt. Thank you, Phoenix. And sunglasses there from Marcy. Thanks, guys. And Carmel. Woo! All right, guys. What we got here? Here's the thing. Thank you, guys. Who was that? That was Aggie. Thanks, Aggie. Roger W. is asking, why did they tell Putin that Biden was going to Kyiv? Putin had no business to know. Thank you, Jetta Mom. Had no business to know. And definitely doesn't deserve the courtesy as he was going to Ukraine, not Russia. Yes, the idea wasn't courtesy. The idea was not getting Biden killed, quite literally. Thank you, Vic Cruz. It's very nice. The idea was not getting Biden killed. Circling around. You don't want a situation where the Russians are bombing Kyiv, not realizing Biden's there, and they kill him. Mind you, Biden had to come by train across Ukraine, okay, from Poland. That means more or less, I'm going to guess, that the train came probably like this across Ukraine. You don't want the Russians bombing that train route, right? For example, the Russians see a lot of cars. They think it's a Ukrainian official, and they say, "Oh, we're going to bomb a high-level Ukrainian official." It ends up being the president of the United States. If the president of the United States gets killed, first of all, objectively, not a good thing if you're American. You don't want your president getting killed, right? Secondly, it would mean war. If the Russians bombed the American president, we'd be at war with Russia, and that would be incredibly dangerous, right? I mean, I absolutely want to beat Russia in this war, but I understand the argument of why we don't want a direct shooting war between NATO and the Russians. That's bad. So that's why we told them. We told them because also we trusted, and I'm sure this is true, we trusted that the Russians also realize you shoot Biden and you're dead. So that by telling the Russians, they made sure they stayed away. So that's what it was. It wasn't a courtesy at all. It was meant to avoid sort of an escalation. But this is also why Putin got into trouble. A lot of the right-wing military bloggers got very upset at Putin in Russia because they felt that this was Putin giving permission to Biden, that basically Biden asked for safe passage and Putin gave it to him. I mean, and they were saying, why did you tell him, no, we're going to shoot you, which of course is ridiculous. But it was great because it showed more of that friction there with Putin and a lot of his base. Let me pull up on TikTok here. And yes, Robin is correct. The war would be over in a day if the U.S. went in. The only thing is the nuclear issue is bad, of course. But as far as the war itself, forget it. Three of you guys. Thank you. Verna Walsh pledged to support on Patreon. Brianna Subi and Jack K. Ruse. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. Wow. I don't think we've ever had 3 people in one day on Patreon. Thank you for that. TikTok questions. Somebody just happened to be quoting. Thank you, Amanda. Somebody just happened to be quoting tomorrow's Guardian newspaper in England. U.S. and its allies have Ukraine's back, Biden pledges. Tomorrow's front page. Yeah, no, and again, I think that, I think it worked out well, the speech. I was a little bored by it, but the overall impression that people had of Biden's speech was that it was a very strong defense. And I actually, let me say one thing before I get to Ben's question here. I forgot to, I mentioned this, but I forgot to mention why it matters. Biden mentioned atrocities. He mentioned tyrants. Biden's language was very strong about Putin. It's language Biden has not wanted to use about Putin. Okay. Thank you, Tomio. If you can figure it out, I appreciate it. Biden did not want to I think this is just my read of this 30 years experience in politics. I think Biden felt that, look, Reagan was happy to call Russia and the Soviet Union the evil empire, right? He was happy to demonize them. That was Reagan's approach. They're evil, they're this, they're that. And they were, very much so. Biden, I think, feels that if you use that kind of language, you run the risk of not being able to step back. Meaning, if we say you're a war criminal, Russia is a terrorist country, right? Supporter of state terrorism. How do you then later on reach some kind of peace deal with a guy who you've basically compared to Hitler, right? Hitler was not somebody you reach a peace deal with. You wouldn't say, well, okay, right? I mean, after knowing everything he did, if you start to talk about Russia and Putin in the same apocalyptic language, it potentially, even the war crime stuff, totally valid that we're accusing Russia of the crimes against humanity. But I will say it definitely causes a problem, because no matter how this war ends, how do we, thank you, Nathan, how do we reach a deal with Russia when we now have accused them of committing wars against humanity, or crimes against humanity, right? That literally, I mean, I would say literally acting like that is a term that came about because of what the Nazis did. You reach a peace treaty? I mean, you say, okay, if Russia, you give back most of the land you took, we're going to forgive the fact that you systematically tried to wipe out an entire people and committed crimes akin to what the Nazis did? I mean, just because you're willing to give some land back? I don't think, right? I mean, it's kind of like you murder somebody. And you say, well, I'll give back some of the possession. I killed the whole family, but I'll give you back their home. So anyway, Biden is not wrong in that regard, that if you really demonize the other guy, how do you step back? So the fact that Biden has gotten much more demonizing of Russia in the speech today is interesting to me, because it goes back to what I said yesterday, the day before. Yesterday was Monday. Yesterday, where I said, I feel like Biden's visit to Ukraine is a sign that he's changing. Thank you, Meg Wood. That he's getting much more hawkish about this war, meaning much less optimistic about trying to get Putin to negotiate, right? And I think that's more of what this language is. Biden is starting to move to a position, thank you, Annie, where I think he's realizing Ukraine has to win this. We're not going to be able to get a negotiated settlement. So let's see. But that's what I hear when I hear that kind of language. Now, Ben, thank you for your very generous question. Let me read this. Do you think Putin withdrew from the New START treaty, that's the nuclear weapons treaty we were talking about today, the day after Biden visited Ukraine, to make it look like Biden visiting was a bridge too far for them and make it look like Biden is pushing us towards World War III? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to remember some of the language. I don't know if it was the language today from the Russians, or if it was the language like a week ago, when we heard the Russians were still not going to allow inspections for the arms control treaty. And the reason they gave was kind of ridiculous. They said something like, the Russians, well, in the current climate, with you helping Ukraine do all these horrible things, how could we possibly work with you on, nuclear de-escalation or whatever it is? And it was kind of like, I mean, right? The US and the Soviet Union were mortal enemies. We always worked together on arms control. It was recognized that that was a good for both countries. It doesn't matter if we hate each other and want to destroy each other. Having the nuclear, having equal respect on the nuclear front with the treaties was a good idea. So the idea that it's honestly, it's whining. It is whining and childish from the Russians to say, oh my God, you're hurting us in Ukraine. We can't talk nuclear weapons with you. But what it is, Ben, is, as I go back to what I said before, the Russians lie, and they lie with the intent to scare the hell out of all of you. Okay. That's what this is. This whole thing with, I think you're right. The whole thing with the nuclear weapons treaty. Thank you, Ross. Is they're trying to make it look like, oh, Biden went to Ukraine, so we're going to not help you with nukes anymore. And what they want, they are hoping this will give more inspiration to Fox News. Forget the fringe crazies. We've got some fringe crazies on the left that are anti-Ukraine, pro-Putin, but they're literally just wonko. They had a protest yesterday in DC. Or Sunday. They're just literally crazy. I think some Europeans too. They're nutsy. What Putin's trying to do is give fuel to Fox News. He's trying to help Tucker Carlson because Tucker Carlson reaches a much larger audience, and Tucker Carlson reaches an audience that actually believes him, right? I mean, I know a lot about foreign policy and defense. Most of Fox News's audience does not. Most of Fox News's audience watches Tucker Carlson and they trust Tucker Carlson. And I understand that, right? You trust the guy. I mean, I watch Jake Tapper on CNN. I've known Jake for years as a colleague. I trust Jake. I don't think Jake's going to spin me wrong. He may give me wrong information occasionally just by chance, but he's not going to spin me wrong. And people who watch Tucker Carlson think the same thing. They go, I like this guy. He's not going to lie to me. We now know Tucker Carlson will lie to you. There was a big story 2 days ago about that. Messages came out, I think it was text messages, where Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity admitted that they were lying about the election. They knew Trump didn't win and all this kind of crap, but they publicly presented it as though, Trump won when they said privately Trump didn't win. And Fox, I think, going back to this, I'm sorry, but the Russia thing, Russia is trying to provide more information to Fox News that Fox News can use as evidence. So they can say, look what just happened. Because of Joe Biden, we don't have this nuclear treaty. Now, mind you, Donald Trump, they're going to say during Donald Trump's year, we had the nuclear treaty. It's all one big game. CNN is not the worst. CNN is one of the best. Certainly, I would say it is, without knowing the European networks as well, it certainly is the best international network from the States. Absolutely. There are obviously other great international networks in Europe, Deutsche Welle, BBC, and others. CNN, Agence France Presse does great reporting too. CNN's great. Yeah. CNN never lies, actually. No, Fox News lies. CNN can get stories wrong. But I think, and I'm not going to get into the whole, Associated Press is always good. I'm not going to get into the whole sort of debate here, but unfortunately, some people found it, and they're not wrong. If you lie a lot, like the Russians, if you're a politician in a political party that rests on lies, you've got to go after and undercut the credibility of people who call you out on those lies. And that means you've got to go after the CNNs and the New York Times and the BBCs and the Deutsche Welle and the Agence France Presse and the Associated Press. You've got to go after all of them because they're going to call you out on your lies. And if your political views are based on Tucker Carlson, they're based on lying to your audience, you got to go after them. You've got to undercut the folks that are going to call you out and say, I'm not a liar, you're a liar, and make it confusing enough, right? That's why there have been so many attacks on CNN. What do you do? But I'm not going to, that one, thank you, Big Gator Girl. I'm not going to back down on that one. Wall Street Journal, run by Rupert Murdoch, but it's a great newspaper. It doesn't make you a bad media outlet just because you're run by a far right nut job like Murdoch. He's not a nut job. He's just a far right activist. But the Wall Street Journal is a great paper, right? So I'm happy to say that. Some people say, Wall Street Journal is bad, but Fox News, it's already been proven. It's unfortunately a propaganda outlet, and that's all it is. And CNN, you guys don't like it because they called out the insurrection, and what do you do? You get over it. All right. What else we got here? More questions. So Benji, so I think that's what was going on. Yeah. And again, the Russians will never miss an opportunity to try to spin things into, my God, nuclear war. Otanbot is asking, how does Putin's narrative of a global conspiracy against Russia compare to other leaders who use similar narratives to consolidate power and justify aggressive actions? And how much of it is based on reality? God, that's like are you my professor in college? I'm not sure who the other, that's a little long of a question. I'm not sure who the other countries doing similar things. I mean, I think maybe I know who you're talking about, and you're trying not to be political, is my guess. I read stuff from all over the world, Borelliatum. What do you read? No, I mean, a positive feedback loop. I literally go every day and read the news from all over the world about what's going on. And then I look at what the experts are saying and what the political experts are saying, what the military experts are saying. You probably watch one network, or now there's 2 or 3 of them that are full of crazy people. I mean, at some point, just because people don't agree with you, sometimes people don't agree with you because you're wrong. Man, what do you do? In any case, Otanbot, way too huge of a question. I can't even tell you. Sorry. Beep, 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 beep. I can pull up another TikTok question. Oh, here we go. 6Evo. Predict more threats this week at Russian events. What do you mean? I'm not sure what you mean. Predict more threats this week at Russian events. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mean the Russians are going to hold more anniversary? Because keep in mind, the 24th in 3 days is the anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Are you saying that more of these Russian anniversary events, they're going to be threatening? Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, Putin himself, interestingly, Putin kind of tries to sit back and not do too much of the nuclear war stuff. Although he brings it up, he kind of says, we have all the weapons we need. He kind of does this kind of thing. And he usually leaves it to people like, Medvedev, one of his top deputies who gets out there and then goes crazy to talk about, we're going to nuke you. I saw last night on TV yet again last night on Russian TV, we should be hitting Berlin. We should be hitting Paris. And you're like, okay, guys, that's nice. Go to bed now. Have another shot of vodka and go to bed. But yeah, that's what all they've got left is trying to scare us. Especially because you've got Julie, I'll get to yours next. You've got a lot of the experts saying that it's not clear the Russians are going to do very well with this offensive they're doing, right? The Russian offensive has already pretty much begun. We're wondering if when I say offensive, I mean like the big counter attack by the Russians this spring. And we're still trying to figure out, like, there's one going on now in eastern Ukraine. We know in Bakhmut, Volodar was last week where the Ukrainians just destroyed them. Bakhmut, where they're just destroying each other. And so what now the experts are saying is it looks like that is the offensive. That is the first offensive. It's been happening for several weeks. The Russians are throwing a lot of men in here, and not much is happening. There still may be a second offensive by the Russians, something bigger they're planning in a few months. Who knows? What the experts are saying, more and more the defense experts, which is really interesting to me, is it's just not clear the Russians are going to be able to make a difference with what they're doing. They might get a little land, but their troops suck. Their equipment sucks. They don't have enough weapons. They don't have enough training. They don't even have sleeping bags and boots for their soldiers, and it's freezing out there. Thank you, Mimosa. And it's freezing out there. And if you don't, here's a way of thinking of it. If you don't have enough food for your family and you double the size of your family, what do you think is going to happen next to your family, right? That's what's happening with the Russian military. They can't feed these guys, literally. They can't clothe them. They don't have enough sleeping bags, and they're literally sleeping outside in trenches in below freezing weather. They don't have enough boots for the winter. They don't have enough weapons for these guys. They don't have enough training to train these guys, and they're going to double the size? Well, guess what's going to happen if you double the size of the troops you're sending to Ukraine, and the current troops can't get enough weapons and can't get enough ammunition and can't get enough food? It means the new guys are going to be in just as bad of a situation. So the experts keep saying there will be some advantage to Russian having more men if they want to just take the men and run them at the Ukrainians and let them get shot down. Literal cannon fodder, as John Hope is saying on TikTok. There may be some advantage in that, but overall, there's no reason to believe the Russians are going to do any better this time than they did over the last year. That's why, if you're Putin and the other Russians, you're kind of at wit's end as to what to do. It is the one reason why people worry about nuclear weapons who actually know the business, because they say there isn't much left for Putin to do at this point other than use nukes. But if he uses nukes, then he loses anyway. Because if he uses nukes, then the West gets involved, America gets involved, and if America gets involved, it's over for Russia. Russia is at best tied with Ukraine, and that's being generous to Russia. If NATO gets involved, Russia's toast. They lose the war. So he can't use nukes, but he's so frustrated because it's not clear what they can do to change the game, that all they can do is threaten and try to scare us and hope that they outlive us. So hope that they drag the war out just long enough that the Western countries say, you know what, right? We've spent too much money there. Elon Musk, we don't want World War III. And finally, the West starts to cut back the money, and that's what gives Russia the advantage. And the only way Russia gets that to happen is threatening nukes, threatening nukes, threatening nukes, threatening nukes, and hope that they scare Elon enough to truly cut off, to cut off Starlink, among other things. Or they wait 2 more years for Ron DeSantis to become president, and they hope to God Ron DeSantis is as pro-Putin, as Trump. He's not, except DeSantis is already making a lot of criticisms of Ukraine, which is not helpful. Okay, Russian Day B. Hi, Russian Day B. God, we're so delusional. God, we're so delusional in the West. Yeah, I'm sure. Welcome to the West, Day B. Anyway, Julia, did you get the sense Putin was avoiding talking about military gains in his speech because there was none to speak of? He seemed to be avoiding that topic in his speech. Yeah. I mean, there haven't been any big military. Okay. Throughout the last year, there were military gains. But here's the problem. There were military gains all around here, all around here, all around here, and the Ukrainians kicked them out. 50% of the Ukrainians got back 50% of their land that the Russians had invaded. Okay. So if you're Putin, had you bragged about getting any of this land, you'd be in real trouble because it's gone. Well, he could brag about this land, right? This is the land that Putin controls now. Now, Crimea, they stole in 2014. This year, the last year, the Russians stole this land, 4 Ukrainian provinces, and they announced in September that they officially made these provinces part of Russia. So now it's totally not. But so now this is all part of Russia. The more Putin brags about these provinces being part of Russia, the worse it is for him if he starts to lose those provinces to Ukraine. One of those provinces, Kherson. Okay. The Russians controlled the entire province. Now, the Russians lost about a month or 2 ago. They lost the entire top part of the province north of the river. They don't control it anymore. The Russians claimed that, if you attack these provinces that are now part of Russia, you are attacking Russia and we will use our nukes. Well, the Ukrainians took back that land. It was part of Russia. They didn't use their nukes. I think Putin's in a weird position where the more he brags about the land they took back, the more he's going to be in trouble when he starts to lose that land. Putin also might realize, I don't know, but he also might realize he's got to negotiate some of the land. And I don't know that he will, but if he really thinks I've got to negotiate some of that land I stole, I've got to give some of it back to buy a peace. Well, stop talking about how it's really Russia now, because you can't give back Russia. That would be crazy, right? Right? Imagine part of the solution to the war saying, so Russia, we want you, remember all of this is Russia. We want you to give back this chunk of Russia, give this chunk of Russia to Ukraine as part of your war settlement. He could never do that. So the more because that's Russia, the more he talks about the Ukrainian area he took as being Russia, the harder it is for him to give it back, because then he looks like a traitor. It's like us giving up New York City or, Boston or Topeka or whatever, right? So, yeah, no, I think that's it. And he's afraid. He's afraid in a month or two he's going to lose it. Now they were hoping for Bakhmut. They didn't get Bakhmut in time, and which is the big town. Not big. It's a small town in the east, but it's the big battle that's been going on, and they haven't been doing well with it. So, oops, scrolling down. Joop. Lots of chatter going on here. Let me pull up another TikTok. 7 o'clock. I'll go a couple of minutes more, and then we can probably go over to Discord. I'm getting hungry, but I did snack before, but this makes me hungry when I do this. Are there any pictures of the nuclear football in Kyiv? I don't know. We've seen it before. The nuclear football is the suitcase that a military attaché carries around. Thank you, Bonnie, for that. That a military aide carries around that contains, the nuclear codes for Biden to launch a nuclear war. And the person is always with the president, wherever he is. And it was reported, of course, he was with the president when Biden went to Ukraine. If you know what you're looking for, you'll probably see the pictures, because we've done it before. I mean, we've seen it before. So, let me see. Yeah, they sure didn't. I mean, Svalbardianer, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Experts in Norway analyzed the people that were in the room during Putin's speech and said, thank you for the Chazak for the kite, and said that they didn't look happy or supportive. They looked really bored, but they didn't just look bored. There was no excitement. There was no anything. I mean, like the State of the Union, ours, we do in America, is boring, but at least like the political party of the guy or gal speaking gets excited. So when Biden's speaking, Democrats get excited. When Trump was giving his State of the Union, Democrats were not excited, but Republicans were excited. Putin's speech, in principle, you're talking to thank you, Inspired. In principle, you're talking to an entire room of people who, are on your side. At least some of them are. It's a dictatorship. These guys were not excited at all. They looked bored to death. They were falling asleep and they were bored. So, I mean, he could use a little North Korea level. I mean, North Korea is too much where everybody in unison is going, but I mean, that's better than these Russians just all kind of going, do you think if Russia did use nukes, do you think, like me, they will truly be alone? Even China would think that Russia's gone too far. That's the hope. Thank you, Iggy Woman. A lot of the experts think China and India would be very upset if Russia uses nukes, and that might be enough to make them turn on Russia. So that's a whole other issue. In addition to the U.S., I mean, if Russia uses nukes, you may also see us having an oil embargo of Russia. I mean, even though it's going to cause massive damage to the world economy, we may not have a choice. Like right now, we're not cutting oil off. I'm talking an oil embargo, where literally you say, you used a nuclear weapon, we're mining your ports, and you're not exporting anything. I mean, it's dangerous stuff, but that is the danger of using nuclear weapons. It also, unfortunately, is the only way you get them not to use nuclear weapons is for them to know that the response is going to be catastrophic, what we do to them, so that they go, okay, just like using nuclear weapons against us means we'll use them back. So they go, okay, we're not going to do it. They need to know that the response is going to be horrific. So, beep, 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 beep. All right, one more question and then we'll do a roundup here. I don't care. Sorry, Magical Photo saying CNN just announced that Russia carried out long-range missile tests during Biden's visit. I mean, whatever. I just don't care. What's he going to do, right? Missiles that they're not going to use against us because we'd be at war and we'd win. So I just don't. They're doing it to scare us, but I just don't care. Oh, yeah. Would we be able to handle Russia without the use of any nuclear weapons? Oh, God, yes. Oh, God, yes. We would destroy. I mean, I'm not saying this is bravado. If we were at war, nobody wants a war with Russia. I mean, it would be deadly. We'd lose a lot of people on all sides. But if we were in a conventional war with Russia without nuclear weapons, we would destroy them. I mean, we would absolutely destroy them. And ask, I mean, the military folks can jump in and explain probably better than I can, but they're always the first to go, oh yeah. I mean, Russia is having a very difficult time beating Ukraine. And by the way, Russia keeps saying because there's NATO weapons. They haven't even begun to see the NATO weapons, right? They don't deal with our aircraft. They don't deal with our missiles. They don't deal with our cruise missiles. They don't deal with anything. Russia is having a hard time dealing with Ukrainian aircraft. Okay? Russia should have been able to destroy Ukraine's Air Force the first day of the war, and they didn't. Imagine if the U.S. Air Force, God bless the Ukrainians, okay? But imagine if they can't take the Ukrainian Air Force, what happens when America arrives with its jets and its fighters? Whew! Right? Thank you, Cheryl. So, yeah, we don't want it. I mean, I don't want war with Russia. It would be very deadly and bad. But if nukes were not allowed, if somehow we knew nukes weren't going to be involved, Russia would be in serious trouble. Yeah. No, we would destroy them. No, but again, they would fire on our cities. They would do to us what they're doing to Ukraine, right? They would just indiscriminately bomb Paris. I mean, they would do all sorts of horrible things. But they would lose. Yes. All right, guys, let me, yep, sorry. Chris is saying on Twitch, stronger, well-fed, dressed properly military would stomp all over Russia. Thank you. Who was that? Happy Beach. Thank you for that. Oh, that's interesting, Kelly. I didn't know that. All right, guys, I'm going to do a quick summary of the news, and then I'm going to go because we'll go hang out on the Discord for a little bit tonight. All right. And then we'll be back tomorrow. So let me do the quick summary. I always like to summarize the news we talked about today. President Biden, thank you, Bonnie and Azamek. Biden spoke today in Warsaw, while Putin also spoke in Moscow. Putin's speech was long and boring, blamed NATO and the West wants to destroy Russia, whereas Biden's was fiery, but very strong for freedom and democracy and supporting our allies. And generally speaking, Biden's speech I was a little bored, but Biden's speech got rave reviews across the board by the media, the experts, the other experts. So don't listen to me. Like I said, I got a little bored, but I don't like Biden's speaking problem or speaking style. I find him a boring speaker, so it doesn't wow me when he speaks, but nonetheless, it was good. Let me look here. Yeah, I'm going to skip sort of the summary of the speeches. We did that. We then talked about crimes of humanity and what the difference is between crimes against humanity and war crimes, because Kamala Harris, our vice president, mentioned last weekend that we had determined that Russia has committed crimes against humanity in Ukraine. And the basic difference is a war crime is something like rape or murder or whatever, right, against a citizen. A crime against humanity is when you do that on a systematic level. In other words, it is a war crime when a Russian soldier says, I don't like that civilian over there. Let's just use him for target practice. It is a crime against humanity when the Russian leaders say, you go out there across Ukraine and you use their citizens for target practice. That is a systemic effort to wipe people out, which is, you can imagine what I'm saying? Like it's a whole other, it's like a conspiracy, like a criminal conspiracy. It's bad enough to have one criminal, one soldier committing a crime. But if the leaders on top are saying, let's be a criminal army and kill everybody, that's a whole other level of evil. That's the difference between the two. But it's harder to prove the crime against humanity because you've got to prove that the guys on top actually did order it. And that's not always easy to prove. Moscow denies limiting ammunition to the Wagner forces. There's a controversy going on where the Wagner mercenary group, soldiers for hire in Russia, claim that the Ministry of Defense is not giving them weapons anymore. The Ministry of Defense came out and said, that's not true. So Prigozhin, who's the head of Wagner, came out and said, that's a lie. And claims that they're only getting 20% of the ammunition that they used to get, that they need, because the Ministry of Defense is pissed at them. And it's great news because it means the Russian military is kind of falling apart, which is great. Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, arrived in Kyiv today. She said that there are no planes on the table for Ukraine. Germany's largest arms manufacturer said the first batch of ammunition for the Gepard anti-aircraft system should arrive in Ukraine by July. Belarus is planning to form 100,000 to 150,000 volunteer force military, but good luck because that would be doubling the current size of their military, and their military is considered one of the worst, if not the worst, in Europe. So doubling the size of the worst military just means more cannon fodder. And finally, the Kyiv Independent reports that a lot of media outlets have received what appears to be a 17-page Russian document detailing their plans for taking over Belarus by 2030. That's the dictatorship next to you, right northwest of Ukraine and right next to Russia. So we shall see. All right, guys, I'm going to call it quits. Thank you for joining us tonight. Didn't look like we had as many of the Looney Tune people on TikTok as usual. I mean, I love you TikTokers. I mean, the crazy trolls on TikTok. But the rest of you, thank you so much. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern. Oops, I'm hitting my mic. 6 p.m. Eastern time, U.S. Easiest thing to do is just set a time. If you like my show, set a timer every day. Just something on your calendar, 6 p.m. So it's 6 p.m. New York City time. You can, or 6 p.m. Eastern time, you can figure out what it is for you. Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. It goes for about an hour. And put it down if you would, because I'd appreciate seeing you guys. It's nice we have a good crowd here, and I think we have a good time. So thank you, moderators, for all the work you've been doing. And I know even on YouTube, the mods yesterday had some fun. And thank you for your gifts. You guys have been amazing. And especially all the Patreon people, all the 3 new Patreon people today. You guys rock. That was, I'm going to see if I can pull up your name one more time. Verna Walsh, Brian Subi, and Jack K. Ruse. Actually, I'll say yesterday. And yesterday we had Lisa Douglas and Christina. So thank you guys. You're very generous from all of you. I really appreciate it. As I said, I do this for free. It matters to me. I have sort of a history in life of taking up these causes and not worrying about where the money comes from. It's funny. Years ago, I worked at the Children's Defense Fund, which is a child poverty organization here in the U.S. run by a very famous woman who's a longtime civil rights activist, African-American, Marian Wright Edelman. And Marian Wright Edelman is one of these people who's bigger than life. I mean, like when you talk to her, you almost want to step 10 feet away because there's so much energy coming off of her that she just scares you. And Marian would always plan these big things. And because she'd want, always planning something big to make a difference. And I remember we were going to have this March on Washington back in 1996. And it was a March on Washington for children, Stand for Children. It was really big. We got a lot of people from all over the country. And we were asking Marian, Marian, how are we going to pay for this? And Marian's quote, God will provide. And that was it. And God did provide. She got the money. But Marian's thing was always do it, and the Lord will provide. And I'm not as religious as Marian, but that's always been the way I sort of approach things. I try to do stuff I think matters and then try to figure out the money later. So I do appreciate your guys' gifts because that is how literally I'm paying the bills. And hopefully we're almost breaking even. I'm almost breaking even, which is good. Not there yet, but pretty close. So hopefully we can still say it. To say hee, I'm not Jewish though. Am I making, I love Jews though. If I'm making Jewish comments that I don't realize, it works for me. Anyway, guys, okay. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. All right. So thank you again. Yeah. Bonne nuit à tous. All right. See you guys tomorrow. I am an attorney as well. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. All right. Oh, Discord. I'm sorry. Yeah. We'll go to the Discord. Duh. I'll go to the Discord for a bit. Once you figure it out, you got to click the read me, click the I accept, and then we're going to be in a group on the bottom left, voice channels, John's After Show. And we hang out for half an hour or something until I get too hungry. All right. See you guys later. Try to see me in the Discord. Otherwise, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Yeah. Well, Tiff, if you can find me a husband, I want to get married. We'll talk. So, all right. Bye, guys.